I think one of them is because we're such a friendly congregation. We're a small congregation, so we tend to know everyone and are very aware when new people come into church, and we all make a point of speaking to those people, making them feel welcome, and just part of the service for that day, or inviting them to return whenever they can. But it's a lovely, friendly atmosphere in the church, and people often comment on that. And I think
you
that
have
helps.
Coffee before the service?
Yeah. Once a month we have coffee before the service, which means that people are relaxed, they're chatting to each other before it. So when we actually sit down in the pews for the service, there's a lovely, friendly, relaxed feeling. And I think that's very welcoming as well. And we much prefer to have coffee before rather than after the service.
Something else you were noticing that's changed in the last wee while is that there are new people involved in leading worship. Christine, you're one of these new worship leaders. And just say something about the way that you lead worship.
Yeah, I think Alan and I are a team that work together. Alan tends to do the prayers, I tend to do the sermons and the hymns. But I think because we're not ministers, we're not experts in theology, we have a far more relaxed approach. And very often in our services, we will be saying to people, we're not separate from you. We're just you standing here doing our best to share. And because it's more relaxed, I also think people are perhaps more willing to come up and communicate with us after a service and chat with us and maybe say, what did you mean when you said such and such? Or why was that reading important today? And because we're part of the community, they know us well, there's maybe not the barrier of us wearing a collar, so they feel free to ask these questions. And I think that relaxed atmosphere helps a lot when new people come into the church. There's, with friendliness, there's just a welcome there, and they feel that we're no different to them. We're just doing our bit to lead the service.
That's great. Now, so you've begun speaking about membership, whereas before maybe you hadn't thought about mentioning membership.
Yes, I think we've become more aware of it to show that we're actually a growing church. And so, we've had people who have been regular attenders at the church over many, many years, support the church in lots of different ways, and then have realised that they're not actually members. So we have approached them, and they've been more than happy to, become members. I do think we've just become more aware of inviting people to be members of the church, and they've reacted very positively.
I was going to say, I also think as a congregation we've become a lot more confident in being able to witness our faith. And I've seen that change in the congregation, certainly over the last 2 or 3 years, that we are far stronger, I think, in our faith in terms of realising that if we are going to keep growing our church, we have to take the responsibility, and we're more able to take that responsibility and say to people, see, you've been coming to church for a few weeks now. Have you ever thought about coming along to church and becoming a member of the church, and trying to explain how that works? And that's a huge positive that I find in our congregation. And certainly in my sermons, I try to focus at the end of my sermon how it relates to Eddleston Parish Church. And in that way, we go away with and this week we're going to try to do this. Maybe say to one person, this is what I believe, or would you like to come along to church, or something very, very simple, but it's opened a doorway to allow people to grow.
That's lovely to hear. You were saying to me earlier that in this time you've seen people's gifts more obviously used, and there was somebody we were talking about, they were calling them a social connector. Just say something more about what their gift is.
Sharing things with other people, and she really is so good at just beginning conversations with people who she thinks may be struggling in life, or are going through some bad times, or just may benefit from coming to know God more in their life. And this person is so good at sharing sermons with them. Now, when I say that, this person has asked me to send them electronic versions of the sermons that I give, and she will share them with other people and then invite them to come along to
Wow, just
to the
our
church.
neighbours, or I mean, kind of like,
Neighbours, yeah, friends,
friends, yeah.
people that come along to some of our other outreach events like Biting the Blether or the choir, something like that.
and this is not a paid position or official. It's just the way that
no,
she is, just her
No,
personality.
that's just her personality. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's just her personality.
Someone that loves others and shares life and things spill over, and
Yeah, exactly.
she
Absolutely.
invites them, and
Yeah.
fabulous. Now, as we're trying to tease out just this fabulous increase in membership, we were talking about certain groups that are important for your church, and the choir was identified as a space and a group that is important.
Yeah, the choir was started as an outreach of the church. It's not a church choir, but it does take part in services when asked, and at Christmas and Easter, things like that. But we've had quite a few, about 5 or 6 new members through the choir, and I think it's just because they have become comfortable within the environment. Because we rehearse in the church, they have become relaxed in the church space. They've taken part in church services as a choir member, and it has just been a very gradual process that they have decided that they would like to come to church on a Sunday, and have become good parts that, good members of our church, have helped in lots of ways, and they've all joined. So the outreach of the church through the choir has been a considerable help.
Yes, it has.
Definitely.
Then there's been occasions that you identified, Christine, at the end of a service, a couple of people came up to you and had found the way that you had conducted the worship had been very powerful.
Yes. I try to do different things in my sermons and try out new ways of doing things. And one of the things I'd done that day was a guided meditation. And at the end of the service, these 2 people came up to me and they were in tears. And I was quite taken aback and wondered what I'd done wrong or what I'd said wrongly. And both of them said it was the most wonderful meditation, and they had never experienced anything like this in church before, and how powerful they'd found the whole thing. And it was only 2.5 minutes, if that. It wasn't a long thing, just a small event that we had at the end of the sermon, and that changed and shifted something in them. And they have been coming back to church since then. And so they are hoping to be joining.
Yeah, hopefully. Yep.
It is interesting. We were saying, why do people become members, or do people know you can become members? I think, Janette, you were saying some people don't know you could become a member.
No, I think some people genuinely think that going to church on a Sunday is, being a member of a church without actually making that commitment, going through a communicants class. So I think it's up to us to make people more aware of that. And I think in Eddleston we have been doing that. And it's probably something in all churches that should be happening, that people genuinely are not aware that there is this step to becoming a member of the church.
Which speaks of a confidence and a joy in your community. And that you want to draw people in and say, actually, do you want to stand up and say this matters to you? And so there are classes that your minister will lead people in. What's the next step when people should express that interest?
Generally speaking, if it's, to me, they've expressed an interest, I will email Janette and our minister and let them know. And I will say to the person that they will have some classes or conversations with the minister to take them through the process of joining the church. And this can be done by Zoom or in person. But I then leave it up to Janette and the minister to take that one forward. Well, we have had a couple of people who have joined the church because they've been disenfranchised with their experiences elsewhere, and that's very positive for us. And I would just say that having become a worship leader, when I go into church on a Sunday, I've experienced a love that I had never really felt before going into church. And I think when you walk in the door of Eddleston, you feel you are welcomed from the minute the door makes the noise of opening. There's someone on the other side with a smile and a good morning, and you just feel as though you're a family member, and it's just an extended family.
Yeah.
And all our new members have just joined that family.
Yes, have just joined that.
And are a huge part of it. And that's what makes us who we are.
And are participating in different parts of the church, being readers, doing duty. It's not just a case of coming to church on a Sunday in the service. They're big, active members of the church.